One rainy afternoon, three brilliant kids stumble upon their single mom's old diary, filled with love letters, sketches, and one mysterious name, Julian. When they track him down, they discover he's not just real, he's a billionaire. But why did he disappear? Why did their mom never speak of him? What happens next will uncover a hidden past, test a fragile present, and awaken a love story that never truly ended. The rain fell hard against the kitchen window, tapping like fingers trying to break in. Inside, the smell of cinnamon toast filled the air. Amelia stood at the counter in her soft work sweater, humming quietly as she poured hot water into a chipped floral mug. It was Sunday, laundry folded, groceries done. The kind of quiet that single mothers cherished. Then it happened. A crash, feet pounding, voices overlapping. The front door swung open with a thud and her three children, Olive, Max, and Ellie, stormed into the kitchen like a flash flood. "Mom!" Olive shouted, breathless. "We've found him!" Amelia turned, startled, still holding the kettle in midair. "Found who?" Max dropped a dusty red notebook on the table. "The guy. The one from your diary." Ellie beamed as she held up a printed photo. "Look, Mommy, his face matches the one you drew." Time froze. The mug slipped from Amelia's hand and shattered on the floor, hot tea spreading in a slow, golden puddle. She did not blink. Her eyes were locked on the notebook. Her notebook. The one she had not opened in more than a decade. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Where did you get that?" Olive, suddenly unsure, said quietly, "The attic." Amelia walked slowly to the table, as if her legs had forgotten how to move. She picked up the notebook with trembling fingers, flipping through pages she had once filled with longing and loss. Then she saw it. The sketch of a young man's face, scribbled in ink, shaded with love. The photo the kids had printed looked hauntingly similar. Older, sharper. But him. Julian. She closed the notebook quickly. Her eyes stayed down. "You should not have gone through this." "But Mom," Max said gently, "he is real. He is alive." "I thought you would be happy," Ellie whispered, suddenly unsure. Amelia stood in silence, the sound of the rain growing louder, as if the storm outside had just entered her heart. She placed the notebook back on the table, wiped her hands on her jeans, and gave a small, distant smile. "Kids," she said softly, "some stories are not meant to be reopened." But her voice cracked on the last word, and her children, brilliant and determined, exchanged a look that said one thing clearly. This story was not over yet. Before she was a mother, Amelia used to believe in fairy tales. She believed that love was a kind of magic, that one perfect summer could change your life, and that promises whispered under the stars were unbreakable. Then life happened, and she stopped writing poetry, stopped waiting, stopped believing. Now, Amelia Monroe was 36 years old, a single mother, and a school librarian in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. She had not had time for fairy tales in over 12 years. Between overdue book returns and parent-teacher nights, her world had become routines and backpacks and budget grocery lists, and her children, Olive, Max, and Ellie, were her reason, her joy, and lately her greatest source of mischief. Their little home was modest but full of character, like the woman who held it together. The walls were lined with bookshelves, crayon portraits hung next to watercolors, fairy lights curled around old window frames like soft vines. There was a dent in the kitchen wall from a misplaced science project, and a faded heart sticker still stuck to the fridge. On Monday mornings, she made French toast for everyone. On Friday nights, they watched old movies on the couch under one big blanket. And every night, she tucked each child in with a different song, a different story, and one quiet kiss on the forehead. Olive was 12, brilliant and bold, always a little ahead of her time. She had Amelia's wit, her mother's eyes, and a habit of finishing people's sentences. Max, 10, was quieter, an old soul in a skinny frame. He loved gadgets, could build a robot out of soda cans, and read encyclopedias for fun. He was the type to think before he spoke, then say something that stayed with you for days. Ellie, the youngest at 8, was a whirlwind of glitter, stickers, and musical theater. She quoted Shakespeare and cartoon characters with the same dramatic flair, often in the same breath. Her hugs were fierce, her opinions stronger. Amelia often said they were her 3 miracles with mismatched socks. What her kids did not know was that before they existed, before Amelia became Mom, there was a different chapter. That chapter was never spoken aloud. It lived only in ink, pressed between the soft covers of a red leather diary she had hidden in the attic when Olive was born. A chapter about being 22, about falling in love during a summer internship, about an idealistic young man named Julian with eyes like storms and promises that felt like sunlight. That summer ended with a letter that never arrived, or maybe it was the goodbye that never happened. All she knew was that he was gone, and she was left with a secret growing inside her, and a world that no longer fit. She never told him. Not because she was angry, but because he was already out of reach. And because starting over meant building something solid, something safe, for her and the tiny heartbeat inside her. Still, there were nights, long after the children were asleep, when Amelia would pour herself a glass of red wine, sit by the window, and wonder who he had become, where he was, if he ever thought of her. She never imagined that her children would become the detectives of her past. That Sunday, after the rain had stopped and the tea stain had been scrubbed from the floor, the kids sat huddled on Max's bedroom carpet, the red diary open between them. "Heyo sounds like someone from a movie," Ellie whispered, pointing at a passage where Amelia had described Julian's laugh. Max adjusted his glasses. "If this is really him," he said, tapping the photo, "then we owe it to Mom to find out." "She might not want us to," Olive said. "She might need us to," Max replied. They sat in silence for a moment, 3 hearts holding one truth. Their mother, the strongest person they knew, had once been hurt, and maybe, just maybe, they could fix it. What they did not know was that Amelia was listening from the hallway, and that tears were silently sliding down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the terrifying hope that maybe some stories were not over. Not yet. It began with a storm. The kind that rattled windows and flickered lights. The kind that turned bedtime into an adventure. The power had gone out just after dinner. The candles were already lit, and the living room glowed like a secret garden. Amelia was in the kitchen, trying to coax the Wi-Fi back to life, while the kids used the darkness as an excuse to start an exploration mission. "The attic?" Max whispered, holding a flashlight like a sword. "It is the one place we have not mapped." Olive rolled her eyes but followed anyway. Ellie clutched a plastic tiara and her favorite stuffed llama as she tiptoed behind them. The attic was dusty, full of mismatched boxes labeled with things like old books, baby stuff, and Amelia College. Max climbed over a stack of Christmas lights and stopped. "This one," he said, pointing to a box with a faded label, "JM Private." They opened it like it was treasure. Inside they found photos, postcards, an old mixtape, and, at the very bottom, a red leather notebook tied with a fraying ribbon. Ellie held it up like it was sacred. "It smells like old paper and secrets." Olive untied it carefully and flipped to the first page. It was not what they expected. Not just facts or memories, but feelings. Raw, poetic, unfiltered. Drawings of stars, sketches of a face, lyrics she had written herself. "I never believed I could fall so hard," Olive read aloud. "But Julian made the whole world feel possible." The room went quiet. Max scanned the pages. "There are dates, names. This is a record." Ellie squinted. "Is this the guy she told the story about that one night? The summer on the coast?" Olive frowned. "I thought that was made up." Max looked up, eyes wide. What if it was not? They spent the next 2 hours piecing together details. His full name, Julian Michael, possibly Blackwell. He worked in tech. mentioned Silicon Valley in a margin, a hand-drawn logo of a raven circled in gold. Max typed the keywords into his tablet the moment the power came back. It did not take long. Julian Blackwell, 42, founder of Ravenlight Industries, a reclusive tech billionaire with rumored philanthropic roots and a private life sealed tighter than a vault. Olive whistled. He is real. Max nodded. And very, very rich. Ellie clapped. Mom dated a billionaire. No, Olive corrected. Mom fell in love with a dreamer who became a billionaire. They looked at each other. Bend at the diary. And then Max said what they were all thinking. What if he never stopped thinking about her? Olive raised a skeptical brow. What if he is married with 6 kids and a dog named Tesla? We will find out, Max said, pulling up Ravenlight's public business calendar. Look, he is speaking at a tech gala downtown next week, black tie, ticketed, high security. Olive's eyes narrowed like a strategist. We need a plan. Ellie whispered, we need snacks. That night, they sat on the floor with notebooks, laptops, and costume jewelry, plotting something that felt too big for them, but too important to ignore. Downstairs, Amelia sat by the window with a book in her lap she had not turned the page of in 20 minutes. She felt something shifting, a wind rising, as if a story she had locked away had just cracked open. The night of the gala arrived like a mission briefing. Max had printed fake passes using designs he found online, complete with barcodes and a fictional nonprofit name. Olive borrowed one of Amelia's blazers and paired it with black slacks she usually wore for school presentations. Ellie wore her fancy tutu and sparkly shoes, clutching a clipboard with fake notes and a toy microphone. They looked like miniature professionals, and they were proud of it. The venue was the Astoria Grand Hotel downtown, where chandeliers shimmered like galaxies, and the air smelled like money and imported cologne. The kids slipped through security with Max's fabricated QR codes and confident smiles. Inside the ballroom, suits shimmered, gowns swept, and every corner glowed with polished charm. A large banner read, "Innovation and Impact, Future Tech for a Better World." They scanned the room. "You should be here," Max whispered, glancing at his tablet. And then they saw him. And Julian Blackwell. Tall, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed in a midnight blue tailored suit. His silver cufflinks glinted under the lights. He moved like someone who had grown used to people making room for him. Eyes calm, voice quiet, yet commanding. "Whoa," Ellie breathed. "He looks like a movie star who just solved a crime." "Stay cool," Olive whispered. "We are not fangirls. We are on a mission." Julian stood near a display of virtual prototypes, listening to an executive explain something about artificial intelligence. The moment the conversation ended, Olive made her move. She walked straight up to him, holding out the folded diary page she had copied. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, clear and steady, "do you know this person?" Julian glanced down. It was a sketch from the diary. A girl in a sundress sitting on a picnic blanket, smiling with a tilt of her head. It had been Amelia's drawing, from a day she said felt like forever in one afternoon. Julian's hand froze on the glass of champagne he was holding. He looked at the sketch, then at Olive, then at Max and Ellie, hovering nearby. His face changed ever so slightly. Recognition, then restraint. His voice was low. "Where did you get this?" Olive replied, "From someone who meant a lot to you once." Julian straightened. "Is this a joke?" Max stepped forward. "She kept this sketch for over 15 years. Julian's gaze narrowed. "Who are you?" "We are her children," Ellie said proudly, hugging the clipboard to her chest. Julian's eyes darted between them again, now searching for something deeper. A resemblance? A reason? But then his voice cooled. "I do not know what story you were told," he said carefully, "but I have not spoken to Amelia Monroe in many, many years." So you do remember her, Olive said. He paused, then nodded once. Yes, but that part of my life is gone. He handed the sketch back. I am sorry, kids, he said, more softly now. Sometimes, things do not end the way they are meant to. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into a crowd of investors and innovators. The kids stood there in stunned silence. Max whispered, "That did not go like I thought it would." Ellie looked like she might cry. "Did we mess everything up?" "No," Olive said quietly, watching Julian disappear toward the ballroom's exit. "We opened a door. He just was not ready to walk through it." They left the hotel an hour later, their stolen moment with the past tucked into Olive's blazer pocket. They had found him. But the story was far from over. 3 days later, he walked into her library like a ghost returning to its favorite haunting place. The bell above the front desk chimed softly. Amelia looked up from the circulation counter and saw him. Taller than she remembered, sharper at the edges, but still entirely him. Julian. For a moment she did not breathe. He walked forward slowly, stopping just far enough away to give her space, but close enough that the scent of his cologne, cedar and something faintly metallic, reached her. "I was not expecting this," Amelia said, her voice remarkably even. "Your children are resourceful," Julian replied. "They me found you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He nodded. "They showed me something," he added, "a drawing." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. "I was young. So was I." Silence stretched between them like a tightrope. "You should not have come," she finally said, forcing her voice calm. "It has been over a decade." "I know. But seeing that sketch, I had to know if it was really you." "And what did you decide?" Her tone carried a hint of the fire he used to love. "That it is really you, but different." He looked at her. Really looked. Stronger. Wiser. More guarded. She smiled without warmth. "Life has a way of carving people up, piece by piece." He stepped closer. "You stopped answering. I wrote to you, called, for months." She blinked. "I never received anything." Julian's expression flickered. "Then someone made sure of that." Her eyes narrowed. "You are blaming others now?" "No, I'm just realizing how much silence cost us both." She shook her head. "You left, Julian. That is all I remember. You left without saying goodbye." "I had to," he said quietly. "There was an emergency. My father collapsed. I flew home. By the time I returned to the city, everything had changed." "And you could not write?" "I did. I swear I did." She looked away, jaw tense. "I gave that letter to your father," Julian added. "I asked him to give it to you." Everything in her froze. "My father?" she said slowly. "He came to my dorm, told me to leave you alone, that you deserved better than a broke dreamer with no future." Julian's voice grew heavier. "I begged him to let me explain. I never heard from you again, so I believed what he said. You had moved on." She shook her head, eyes glistening now. "He never told me anything, not one word." Their pain pooled in the space between them like fog. "I was going to ask you to come with me," Julian said, "that summer. I had no money, no plan, just a belief that you and I could build something from nothing." She laughed, once, bitter and broken. "And instead, I built something alone." Julian flinched. Then his eyes searched hers. "Are they mine?" Amelia stared at him. "Excuse me?" "The children. Olive, Max, Ellie. Are they—" She cut him off. "No, they are mine. That is all you need to know." His face dropped. "I raised them," she continued. "Fed them, held them through sickness, laughed with them on birthdays. I did it all. Alone." "I am not trying to take credit," he said softly. "I am just trying to understand." She stepped back. "There is nothing to understand. You were a beautiful chapter in a story I closed a long time ago." "And yet," Julian said gently, "your children went looking for me." Amelia's breath caught. She hated that he had a point. Hated how much her voice trembled when she said, "This is not a movie, Julian. We do not get second chances wrapped in red bows." He smiled faintly. "No, but sometimes we get a knock at the library door." Her eyes narrowed again. "Do not romanticize this. You are still a billionaire, and I am still a woman who works part-time in a school with a leaky roof." He said nothing. "You built an empire," she continued, "and I built a life. We are not the same people." "Maybe not," he said, "but I still remember how you take your tea. With honey. 2 spoons. She turned away, throat tight. "This was a mistake," she whispered. Julian's voice was low, almost breaking. "I hope not." Then, without waiting for permission, he turned and walked out of the library, the bell above the door chiming one last time. Amelia stood behind the counter, hands clenched, heart racing. And somewhere behind the bookshelf, her children sat, hidden, watching everything. "Guys," Olive whispered, "they are still in love." Max nodded solemnly. "They just do not know what to do with it." Ellie tugged on Olive's sleeve. "Can we fix this?" Olive's eyes gleamed with something between mischief and hope. "We have to try." She found the map by accident. It was late, after story time. The house was quiet. Amelia had gone into Max's room to put away laundry and noticed the edge of a corkboard peeking out from under his bed. She pulled it out slowly and froze. There it was, a full conspiracy wall, child style. Pushpins, yarn, photocopies, old pages from her diary, photos of Julian Blackwell clipped from business magazines, a printed map with circles and handwritten notes like possible connection Stanford, same timeline. Compare sketch to photo, same jawline. And in the center, underlined in bright red marker, find him for mom. She sat down on Max's bed, stunned. The silence in the room shifted. Then she heard the light creak of feet outside the door. Olive stepped in first, her hands behind her back. "We were going to tell you," she said, quiet but firm. Max stood behind her, guilt written across his small face. Ellie peeked in last, holding her stuffed llama like a shield. "We just wanted you to be happy," she whispered. Amelia looked at them, her children, her whole world. The 3 faces that had pulled her through every hard year, every lonely night. Tears rose, unbidden. "You read my diary," she said, her voice cracking. "We are sorry," Max said quickly. "It was in the attic. We were just curious at first." "And then it was like you had this whole other life," Olive added, "before us." Ellie crawled onto the bed beside her and wrapped her arms around Amelia's waist. "I saw the way your eyes got sad sometimes," she said softly. "And I thought maybe it had to do with him." Amelia pressed her palm to her mouth, trying to keep herself from sobbing. "You should have told us," she whispered. "We thought if we found him," Olive said, "you might believe love could come back." Amelia finally let the tears fall, quietly, without shame. She pulled all 3 children into her arms and held them tightly, burying her face in their hair. "I am not mad at you," she said through the tears. "I am just overwhelmed." "Do you still love him?" Max asked, muffled against her shoulder. "I do not know," she admitted. "I think part of me always has." "Then maybe it is not too late," Olive said. "Even if you do not want him to be part of our lives, maybe he deserves to know why he still matters." Amelia exhaled shakily, running her hand through Olive's curls. "You are too wise for 12. You say that every time," Olive mumbled. They sat in silence for a while, just breathing together. And then Amelia whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe I am not afraid of him. Maybe I am afraid of believing in something again and having it break me." "You will not break," Ellie said. "We will hold you up." Amelia looked at her children and saw in them all the strength she had forgotten she gave. Love multiplied. Her past had shaped her, but her future was staring at her with big eyes and open arms. And maybe, just maybe, they were right. Some stories did deserve a second chapter. The next morning, Amelia made a phone call she had avoided for over 6 years. She drove 2 towns over to a retirement home tucked behind a grove of maple trees. The hallways smelled like lavender oil and lemon polish. Her footsteps echoed quietly on the tiled floor as she walked toward room 205. Inside, her father sat by the window in a cardigan and slippers, sipping tea and pretending to read the newspaper. He looked up, surprised. "Amelia, I need to ask you something," she said, skipping the formalities. He set the paper down and blinked slowly, as if bracing for a memory. She held up a copy of Julian's letter, the one she had finally seen years too late. "Did he give you this?" she asked. His face twitched, then stiffened. "I do not remember." "Do not lie," she cut in, her voice low but steady. "Not today." There was a long silence. Then he sighed. "Yes. He gave it to me." She felt her hands go numb. "I read it," he said, "and I threw it away." She closed her eyes for a second. "Why?" "Because he was nothing," her father said. "No money, no degree, just dreams and promises." She sat down across from him. "And I was your daughter, not your property. I was trying to protect you." "No," she said sharply. "You were trying to control me." His eyes watered, but he said nothing. "You kept him from me," she whispered. "You stole that choice." He looked out the window. "I wanted more for you than I had for myself," he said quietly. "But I see now, I may have taken too much." She stood, folding the letter carefully and tucking it into her purse. "I came here for the truth. I have it now. Goodbye, Dad." As she walked away, his voice called softly after her. "He did love you, you know. I could see it. That is why I was afraid." Amelia paused, just for a moment, and then she kept walking. That evening, back at home, she sat on the living room floor with the kids. The diary and the letter lay between them. She read the letter out loud, slowly, so they would understand every word. It was passionate, hopeful, a little naive, but it was real. Julian had written about their summer together, about how she made the world brighter, about wanting to start a life together. He asked her to leave with him, to trust him, to build something from nothing. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks as she read the final lines. "If you feel the same way, meet me at the train station Friday, noon. No matter what happens after, I want to know I tried. I want to know we mattered." Amelia folded the letter carefully, staring down at it as if it might still carry warmth. "I never knew," she whispered. Mox leaned against her side. "But now you do." Olive said, "You always told us that stories are about timing. Maybe yours just needed a long pause." Ellie added, "And now it is time to turn the page." Amelia laughed through her tears. "Where do you three come up with this stuff?" Olive shrugged. "You raised us on books, Mom. Some of it stuck." That night, while the kids slept, Amelia sat at the kitchen table and stared at the letter again. Her fingers hovered over her phone. She found his number on a business contact page. She typed, "I know the truth now. I am sorry we both lost so much. I would like to see you." She hovered over the send button for a full minute. Then she pressed it and waited. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I never stopped hoping you would." It was a quiet Thursday. The library smelled faintly of lemon-scented wood polish and old paper. Outside, golden afternoon sunlight filtered through the window panes like a soft blessing. Amelia sat cross-legged with a group of second graders gathered around her, reading aloud from a book about bravery and belonging. Then the door opened. She did not look up at first, but the children did. Their eyes widened. Whispers, "Is that a movie star?" She turned slowly. There he stood, Julian, in a crisp, dark suit, hair neatly brushed, but eyes soft, softer than she remembered. In his hand was a worn copy of The Little Prince. "May I read the last page with you?" he asked gently. The children looked at her. So did the entire staff. Amelia's heart felt like it had stopped and started all at once. She nodded. He sat beside her on the carpet, folding his legs like he had done this all his life. His voice was smooth, rich, and steady. "And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly." She joined in without missing a beat. What is essential is invisible to the eye. They finished the story together. The children clapped. But all she could hear was the thunderous rhythm of her own pulse. Later, as the sun lowered and the last student was picked up, they walked quietly outside. The sidewalk was warm beneath their feet. "You remembered the quote," she said. "I remembered everything," he replied. She stopped, looked up at him. "You should have come sooner." "I did not know if I was welcome." She smiled. "I did not know either, until the kids reminded me how to hope." He took her hand. "Amelia," he said, his voice catching, "I do not want to waste another day." "Neither do I." Then he did something bold. He knelt on one knee. From his coat pocket he pulled out an old charm, one she had given him once, a tiny copper star, a trinket from a flea market. He had turned it into a pendant. "I am not asking for a fairy tale," he said, "just a second chance to write a better ending, with you, with them, all four of you." She laughed, half crying, half breathless. "Julian Blackwell," she said, "I never thought a billionaire would propose with a flea market charm, but here we are." He smiled. "Oh, is that a yes?" "That is a yes." 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, the cafe down the street held a soft opening under new management. A chalkboard sign read, "Four of Hearts Cafe, home of second chances." Inside, Julian was behind the register, awkwardly learning the espresso machine. Olive ran the clipboard with clipboard in hand. Max fine-tuned the cafe Wi-Fi. Ellie wore a mini apron with sparkles. And Amelia? He was behind the pastry case, handing out muffins with a wink. Life was not perfect, but it was full, warm, real. And as the family closed the cafe that night, Julian wrapped an arm around her waist and whispered, "You were never just a chapter." She leaned into him. "You were the turning point. Some love stories do not end, they just wait, patiently, until the right hearts are ready." If this story moved you, made you smile, or brought a tear to your eye, we would love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, have you ever found an old letter, a memory, or a moment that changed everything? We read every comment, and we especially love hearing where you are watching from, whether it is a big city, a quiet town, or somewhere in between. If you believe in second chances, in heartwarming stories, and in the quiet power of love that endures, please like, share, and subscribe. More soul-stirring stories, more emotional stories, more unforgettable journeys are coming your way. Because the best stories are the ones we live, and sometimes all it takes is the courage to turn the page.